Okay, now that we're inside Unity and we can see our entire blank world, we have a camera, and that camera lets us see into that world, and we have a directional light. Let casts light the world. And we have a directional light. We have a camera that allows us to see inside our world, and we can see the ray of our lens and what direction it's looking in. And we have a directional light. This light will cast some light on whatever we point it towards. In this case, it's kind of set up to light up everything. So let's start off by adding a 3D object that will become the floor of our game. So the first thing we're going to do is go up here to the menu. Up in the top left is where the menu is for basically any program on Windows or on Mac. And from there, I'm going to hit Game Object, 3D Object, and I'm going to create a cube. So just like that, it adds a cube into our scene. I like to have a tendency of centering our cube, moving it to exactly the center of our game. So to do that, we go up to the position, and under the X we put 0, the Y we put 0, and the Z we put 0. Now this cube is in the middle of our world. So this isn't a very good floor yet because it's pretty small. So why don't we adjust its size? Its size from this. Now this object doesn't make a great floor. It's kind of small. So why don't we resize this? So what we'll do is go over here. Now this is our inspector window. Our inspector window allows us to see all the properties that are associated with our cube or any object in our game if we click it. If I click on the camera, I'll get all of the properties associated with the camera. Directional light, same thing, and you'll see that our light has settings such as color. Our camera will have things like a background. Our cube will have things like the cube filter and a box collider assigned to it. So we'll get into what all those things are a little bit later, but let's start messing around with where this cube is. So this cube currently is set to a position. So inside the inspector properties for each object, we'll find information about where it is inside our world. That's inside the transform section. The transform section tells us our object's position, its rotation, and the size or scale of it. So let's move it so that it's in the center of our world at coordinate 0, 0, 0. So I'll select the X, type in 0, Y, type in 0, Z, type in 0. Now our cube sits in the center of our world. So our cube isn't quite a good floor yet also because it's not really big enough yet. We want to have kind of a long floor because we're doing a runaway game. So let's go into the scale or its size and we'll choose a direction to extend it in. I like the idea of the coordinate system being X going left or right, Y going up and down, and Z coming in or out. So let's expand the Z scale to be 100. And see, it's way bigger. And as you can see, it also started to scale from the center out. So it didn't go in one direction or the other, it went from the center out. So let's adjust that. So I want my starting position to be at 0, 0. So all we have to do is move our Z position to be half of its length forward, in this case 50. So now right here is at 0, 0, and it goes 100 units in that direction. Let's move in a little bit. We can also make it a little bit bigger, I think. I also think it'd be good to make it a little bit wider. So why don't we click on this, and the question we have is what direction do we add to, X or Y, to be able to figure out which way we'll be making it wider. One, we can just type a number in here and see what happens, and that's perfectly legitimate. Test early, test often. Or we can look over here. This little gizmo, it's actually called a gizmo, tells us what direction everything is in. So notice that Y is up and down, Z is in and out, and X is left and right. So in order to make this wider, all we'll have to do is go to our X scale and then type in a bigger number, like 10. And there you have it. We have our beautiful floor to get us started in our game. Now remember, catch up to this point before you move on to the next lesson. Okay, now that we have a floor, we need a player to be able to move around on that floor. So to create a player, we're going to make this super simple, and we are just going to add another cube. So we're going to go to Game Object, Create 3D Object, and we're going to hit Cube. And there's our cube. But we notice there's a problem here. If I look in, the cube is quite literally in the floor. In fact, it's below the floor. This is why before I liked saying the position to 0, 0, 0. It gives us a reference for where everything is. So I'll set its position to 0, 0, and 0. And there's our cube. Now we still get a problem. If we look really closely here, it appears that our cube is both inside the floor and halfway out, right? Not great. We want to raise it up a little bit. We have two different ways of doing this. One, I can click this and drag it and move it up. And you can see that that adjusts this. And this makes sense. It should be about 1 because this has a thickness of 1, so it's up 1 from 0. And then I can move this forward this way. And you can see right here is adjusting as I move it. So that looks about good. Let's play this and see what happens. Oh, our camera is in a weird place. Let's move the camera. So let's start it off again. 0, 0, 0. Now let's move it up. And see, when I select the camera, I can see a preview of what I'm seeing. All right, let's try that. And there's our cube. And there's our player. This is a great start and all, but it's kind of boring. So far, our player is the exact same color as our floor. It's kind of hard to see him, and everything is kind of named Cube and Cube 1. So let's start customizing our game just a little bit. So first, we're going to give our player a name, just so that in here, our hierarchy of stuff that is in our game, I can tell what object is what. So I'll click on Cube, parenthesis 1, which is this guy. You can see because it actually highlights it. And I'm going to go up over here. I'm going to name him Player. I know, really original, right? So from there, I'm also going to go over here, click on Cube, which is our floor. I'm going to name him Floor. So now we can kind of tell what each object is just by looking at its name within our hierarchy here. So now let's give our player a little bit of color. So in order to do that, we first have to create a material that will hold all that color information. For that, what we're going to do is create a new material. So let's go and right click inside our assets window. And then we're going to say create. And then we are going to create a material. We'll name this material Mat Player because it's the material for the player. And now we have all these options over here. To set the color, we're going to change the albedo setting. So I can click here on this. Let's make them maybe red. And I can see a live preview right here. Let's choose that color for now. And then I can apply it to my player by simply clicking and dragging. And you can see whatever it's touching will change and adopt the color of that material. So I'll let go, and now our player is red. Now this has a couple other settings other than just albedo. I can change its metallicness, which you can see kind of darkens it a little bit. Its smoothness. Its smoothness allows it to reflect light slightly differently. The reason why it's a material instead of just a color is that, remember, color is just the light that reflects off an object, right? In the real world, our skin or our phones don't really have color, as to say, it just absorbs certain frequencies of light and then reflects whatever it does not absorb. So black objects tend to absorb more light than white objects, which reflect most of the spectrum of light. So with this, as we get more and more into different ways of handling light within Unity, this red will not necessarily look just uniformly red. It will change a bit depending on all of the lighting conditions around it. Let's play our game to test it. And there's our player, and there's our floor. All right, catch up, and I'll see you in the next lesson.